Welcome back, everyone. This is part 4 for this news report today, the last one for Monday, July 8th, 2013. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube, my channels are ddargo2012 and ddargo2013. So, I have the economic news for you, and some Big Brother one. Millennials expect a bright future in spite of the present, so troubling unemployment, soaring debt, global turmoil, says too many it looks like a grim future. The economy didn't faze Kim Davis, 22, graduated from UCLA, and confidently predicted a really bright future for herself and her classmates. Davis was glowing on graduation day like so many young adults around her. Researchers say such optimism is especially striking among young adults of their generation, often called millennials, as they weather some of the worst financial conditions in decades. They're tough, right? Though young adults are less upbeat than they were around the turn of the millennium, their hope remains high. It's hard to imagine a time where there was this level of optimism among a group so hit hard by economic conditions. He says in the face of the Great Recession, it's pretty phenomenal. As unemployment among young adults hits record highs, 88% of people between 18 and 34 said they had enough money or would have enough money in the future to meet their long-term financial goals. He says even among those who had said they were unemployed and financially strapped, 75% said they would someday have enough money. Overall, nearly 3 out of 4 believed that they would achieve their goals in life or already had, which was slightly more than the older adults. Their elders are less hopeful for them. So 54% of Americans over the age of 55 thought young people today were unlikely to have a better life than their parents, compared to 42% of those ages 18 to 34, the Gallup poll found. It says over the past couple decades, people in their 50s and 60s have tended to be less upbeat about their chances of their children living as well as they do. In other surveys, millennial optimism also appears to outpace Generation X, born in the late 1960s and 70s, who saw divorce surge and culture wars explode. Millennials born in the 80s and early 90s watched the world go digital and the World Trade Centers fall. They're more likely to have gone to college, less likely to have gone to war, and less likely to have wed than their elders were at the same age. Fewer say they belong to a particular faith, yet they are about as likely to pray as were their counterparts in the 80s and 90s. It says tattoos and piercings are more common among them. Owning a gun is less so. Most have slept next to their cell phones. So this is where I think what I think comes into play, which is they're naive. Their optimism is linked in part to their attitudes instilled by parents and teachers who told them they could do anything that they wanted, right? You can grow up to be the president. You can grow up to do this. And then you grow up and you're like, wow, this place sucks, dude. Only 47% of adults have full-time jobs. So release of the June jobs report Friday was something of a relief for the markets. The Labor Department reported that the economy gained 195,000 jobs in June, which beat economists' expectations. But it goes on here, says it provides clear evidence that the nation is splitting in two. Only 47% of Americans have a full-time job, and those who don't are finding it increasingly out of reach. 3/4 of part-time workers are trapped with no hope of promotion. Research shows that more than 75% of workers who opt for shorter working hours are unable to progress from within their firm. More than 3/4 of part-time workers feel trapped in their jobs and unable to get promoted or find another flexible role that fits their skills, according to research. It suggests that those who have opted to do shorter working weeks often hit a wall and see their careers stall. 7 in 10 respondents said they had downgraded the salary and level of job they applied for, with the average salary sacrifice of about £6,000. Employees with children expected to take home £436 less than those without children. Almost 3/4 of those interviewed by researchers said they haven't been promoted since working part-time, with more than a fifth saying they wouldn't expect to be. And lastly, yet more than a quarter, 25%, said they're overqualified for the part-time role that they currently hold. Majority of new jobs pay low wages, study finds. So this is something that I just included in there. This is August 30th, 2012, so it's not exactly new news, but 47% are part-time, and we're talking about low-wage jobs, and you're not going to get promoted. So 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck from June 24th. You've probably seen this too. 3/4 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck with little or no emergency savings, according to a survey. Consumer borrowing in the U.S. rises $19 billion, most in a year. Consumer borrowing in the U.S. climbed in May by the most in a year as Americans put more purchases on their credit cards and took out more school and automobile loans. So you gotta love the usury system, right? The boost to household wealth from recovering property values and higher stock prices is putting Americans in the position to capitalize on lower interest rates and purchase costlier items. So, it's like, I know there's a whole system, and Chota Boy, he can explain a lot better than I can, but just kind of a simplistic way that I see it is Americans, pumped a bunch of money into the economy through the government and that these programs, so they paid for low interest rates so they can borrow more money. Confidence to borrow is also being punctuated by faster job growth and income growth that will help sustain consumer spending that accounts for about 70% of the economy. They were arrested trying to kidnap themselves. The young Norwegians were busted for blackmail. 18, 21, and 22 busted for trying to stage their own kidnapping, blackmail their families into giving them money for their own release. So the police said, "I've never seen anything like this before." Said if only he had watched more Law and Order. Well, maybe that's what they did, watching too much TV. EU-U.S. free trade talks start, overshadowed by espionage allegations. This is coming from Germany, of course, the spying in that. Talks on the biggest bilateral trade deal in history. The EU-U.S. free trade agreement starts in Washington on Monday, despite France's threat to postpone France over accusations of U.S. spying on EU diplomats. So it could boost economic growth by $100 billion a year, they say. One of the most sensitive issues for Europe is the U.S. Buy American requirement, with the EU seeking to get exemptions from that on public works projects. The U.S. in turn wants its counterpart to reduce barriers to genetically modified crops. Remember, we were talking about, we just covered this last week, a lot of times when you buy American, you're actually not buying American. Next up, U.S.-EU talks seeking to exclude the rest of the world. So this person who's being interviewed by Press TV on Monday said that these trade talks are not about free trade, but about free trade blocks. Crap about surveillance. He said that U.S. surveillance program is not exclusive to Washington alone. The European powers are part of the global surveillance effort too. They cooperate extensively with the U.S. in this worldwide surveillance, basically as part of their ongoing war on terror. Lastly, U.S. and European trade is already worth $1 trillion a year and accounts for half of the global market. And it says here that this trade agreement is expected to be bringing in about $159 billion a year and 400,000 jobs. North-South Korea reached deal on industrial complex. Neighbors quickly rolling back tensions from earlier this week. So that said 15 hours. The talks finally reached a deal. It says here, a joint industrial complex. It was closed for 3 months. George Bush to the GOP Republican Party, give immigration a chance. He wants Republicans to consider immigration on its own merits, not just a part of a party-saving piece of legislation. Sometimes it takes time for some of these complex issues to evolve, and it looks like immigration, has a chance to pass. It says the reason to pass immigration reform is not to bolster the Republican Party, it's to fix a system that's broken. I didn't know this, but this is France's 2008 team. They probably have different pictures of the starters and non-starters, but yeah, immigration and all that's it's a very French-looking team. So Athens mayor physically attacked over job cuts. Athens mayor has been attacked by local authority workers protesting against job cuts tied to Greece's financial bailout. He was physically attacked on Sunday by suspected union workers protesting job cuts. And they say it's a win for the defense for Zimmerman, the Zimmerman trial. A jury to hear Martin's pot use. So Judge Nelson ruled on Monday that jurors in the George Zimmerman trial will be allowed to hear about marijuana found in Trayvon Martin's system the night he was fatally shot, but prosecutors argued that the amount was so minimal that we just don't know what effect it had on Martin. They also accused the defense of trying to backdoor someone very negative character evidence into the trial. Then just physically soft, says Zimmerman's mixed martial arts instructor, says he was a lousy fighter. So it says here that Zimmerman claims that he was beaten up by Trayvon Martin before shooting him in the chest. A witness to the altercation between them previously testified that they saw a person later identified as Trayvon Martin on top of Zimmerman attacking him ground and pound style. So not looking good for pro Trayvon people. You know, people when they have those riots out there attacking people, saying this is for Trayvon. Brazilian referee beheaded by spectators after he fatally stabs player. A double murder takes place at a Brazilian amateur match. Pretty crazy story. Police in northern Brazil said one man has been arrested after a referee who fatally stabbed a player during a match was decapitated by spectators who stormed the field. North Carolina National Guard Rapid Reaction Force Civil Unrest training photos. So it says the following photos depict soldiers from the 252nd Combined Arms Battalion training in June for the role as a rapid reaction force capable of responding anywhere in the state of North Carolina within 4 to 8 hours, with additional forces arriving about a day to a day and a half. This says the same unit trained in March to respond to an emergency ahead of federal assets by providing site security, establishing roadblocks or checkpoints, and assisting civilian authorities in controlling civil disturbances. So it says here the exercises depicted below were held between June 10th and 14th at an abandoned shopping mall and water treatment facility in Charlotte. So soldiers trained to suppress protesters who perform a sit-in as part of a fictional group called the Pink Panthers. According to the North Carolina National Guard, the exercise at the water treatment facility tests soldiers' ability to use non-lethal force to disperse crowds of aggressors. So, and we'll just go through some of these photos here. There they go. So just more getting ready. And he even had a Black Hawk helicopter as well. Lastly, the exercise was put on hold briefly due to heavy rains. So yeah, they didn't synchronize with the weather modification with the U.S. Naval Research and that Air Force. It says here 63 people shot since Wednesday. This is in Ramaland, Chi-Town. Heading into Saturday night, 63 people have been shot in Chicago since Wednesday. The latest shootings occurred Saturday afternoon. Then you have this Nikki Gasser, How Gun Control Killed My Husband, who first began to legally carry a gun after the kidnapping and murder of 2 University of Tennessee students in 2007, but on that rainy April night 2 years later, she was forced to lock her gun in the glove compartment of her car due to the Tennessee law that forbids citizens with a carry permit from bringing their weapon into a restaurant or bar. She was forced to watch in horror as a man who had been stalking her pumped 6 bullets from a .45 into basically her husband and his boyfriend, ending his life and shattering Nikki's existence. So go in there and check that out. Missouri governor vetoes bill nullifying federal gun grab. Governor Jay Nixon Schoen declared his independence from the Missouri state legislature on July 5th by vetoing a bill passed overwhelmingly by that body. So it says here, this bill was titled the Second Amendment Preservation Act and would have denied to the federal government the authority to enact any statutes, rules, or orders that restrict or prohibit the manufacture, ownership, use of firearms. But they say that Nixon can't be blamed too harshly for vetoing the bill. University of Denver plans to give George W. Bush the Improving Human Condition Award. One of the bizarre trends that I have covered this year is the distribution of phony awards to high-level crony political oligarchs, either for PR purposes or for money. I thought I'd seen it all, but a couple of weeks ago when I read that Jeb Bush was set to present the Liberty Medal to Hillary Clinton, the University of Denver was not outdone, as they plan to give the Improving Human Condition Award to none other than George W. Bush. Authors said it was not only an embarrassment to the University of Denver, but also the entire state of Colorado, their adopted home. NSA controls global internet traffic via private fiber optic cables. Deals brokered between the federal agents and foreign corporations have allowed the U.S. government to easily intercept and interpret a vast swath of communication data set around the world. The U.S. government encouraged analysts to tap into an array of underwater fiber optic cables that serve as a conduit for around 99% of the world's internet and phone traffic. AT&T joins Verizon and Facebook in selling customer data. In the next few weeks, they are going to begin selling customer smartphone data to the highest bidder. So go in there and check it out. Then we have Oops, IRS publishes tens of thousands of social security numbers to online database. Google reportedly paid AdBlock Plus not to block its ads. Says Google and other companies are paying to be included on a whitelist that prevents some of their ads from being blocked by the free service. Tweet referencing Pink's song Time Bomb gets teen arrested at concert. 16-year-old said, "I'm ready with my bomb, time to blow up." So again, this is another comment. You know, the other dude's sitting in jail right now getting beat up. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.